Ayan na guys. Ayan na, pag-usapan natin ang latest mga genius, mga super magaling, mga alam niyo na, pag-usapan natin yan shortly. By the way guys, I'm just adding a new kind of dynamic dito sa mga live streams natin. Dadagdagan rin natin itong Twitter Spaces dahil marami mga charlatans nakita natin na gumagawa rin ng Twitter Spaces at nakiki-self-relevance over the weekend. Ayan, just when we thought na yung nangyayari sa Russia at sa ilalim ni Putin ay next level, mukhang spaceship itong, biglang ito nangyari dito sa Pilipinas. Boom! Meron na tayong bagong presidential advisor on poverty alleviation. Yan, si Attorney Larry GADON, otherwise known as, alam niyo yan, kilala yan. Okay, let me do, what am I supposed to do? No. Sige, start ko itong, let me start my first official space dito sa pangit natin, sorry guys, I'm doing a multitasking here. So, meron tayong YouTube on the left, meron tayong on the front, dito naman gumagamit tayo for our Facebook meta. Now, I just started my first ever space naman dito sa Twitter. I just thought it's time to also leverage, at saka maximize yung ating following on Twitter. I think yung pinaka-craziest aggressive engagement natin is actually on Twitter. I was thinking about it, so parang sabi ko, wait lang, parang hindi ko ginagamit itong Twitter na to. So now we're doing a live, So this is not just Meta Live, not just YouTube Live, but it's also, Twitter Live. Elon Musk in the house. Yan. Alright, guys. So dito sa space, I'm checking on the right here, may mga pumapasok na. Ayan, si Minette, Nathan, Paul, among other people are coming in. So I don't know, maybe in the future I have to appoint a co-host to help me out because I have to multitask here. Ayan, pag-usapan natin ang appointment ni Larry GADON. I mean, how I wish I did this Twitter space earlier over the weekend when we did our analysis of the Russia. By the way, dun sa mga interesado, meron na akong Substack. So officially, yesterday, finally, I got some time to write. Aside from our usual writings and mainstream media writing, nakasulat tayo ng first Substack natin. So dun sa mga interesado, you can check my first Substack entry looking at the life of a cook who became a coup plotter. So, pinag-usapan ko yung situation sa Russia, Yevgeny Prigozhin. So please check out my Substack. Libre po, mag-subscribe, hindi pa siya monetized. Ayan, dahil mga construction pa nangyari dito. Ayan. Kuya, matagal pa tayo dyan. Wait lang. So let me just bring out yung Substack ko mga guys para makikita nyo naman. Please follow my Substack. Libre lang yan. Just subscribe, just follow. So on my Substack, you will see my more relaxed, vlogger-ish way of writing. So it's not gonna be your typical, more formalic writing. So kindly check that out. It's actually a reminder of my earlier days when I was vlogging for the Huffington Post. That's actually how we started. So let me just bring it out. So ito po yung first entry natin sa Substack. Please check it out. It's for free. So Richard Haydarian, At Richard Haydarian, ito po yung Substack natin. So first article natin is Russian mutiny from cook to coup plotter. Also please, folks, hindi lang mga ka-meta, ka-YouTuber, ka-spacer, please also add yung latest na podcast project namin, Project Pilipinas with Scott Studios. We launch our Real Talk, so please check it out on YouTube. Also libre yan, wala namang bayad lahat yan. So please lang, konting click lang, konting love, konting support. I will really, really appreciate it. Let me just project ito dun sa mga kaibigan natin on Meta, on YouTube who want to check it out. Ayan, Real Talk. Ayan guys, ini-effort namin yan sa studio yan. Talagang pinaghirapan nila Patrick and the club. So I'm very, very thankful for folks who have been helping us out. Let me show this again. Real Talk dito sa YouTube. I'll also post the link later on sa Twitter ko dun sa mga followers natin on Twitter. At saka, of course, followers natin on Meta, Facebook, and other kinds of platforms. Wala pang TikTok hindi ko pa na-set up yung TikTok. Wait lang, ilalabas ko lang to. 1 second lang mga ka-meta. Please, ayun na, naka 5 videos na kami. Please check it out. Real Talk. Libre lang yan. Ayan, may 6,000 subscriber na kami. So start pa lang kami. Please follow us, support us. Every single subscription, every single person joining us, super malaking tulong po sa amin yan. So I really, really appreciate that. Let me just project this. Oh, yan. Sorry kay Attorney Gadon. Ay, ex-Attorney Gadon kasi suspended siya, di ba? Wait lang. Balikan ko yung suspended. Very shortly. Parang dami mga suspended lawyer ang na-hire. Alam niyo na, sino yung isa pang suspended na pinag-usapan natin. Wait. Ito. Okay guys, ito po. Please add itong Real Talk natin over YouTube. Libre lang po yan. So, soon you'll have an analysis of the GADON appointment also with other kabardagulan and other friends and other fellow podcasters dito sa Pilipinas. Ito, in-effort namin na talaga studio production, next level yan. So, please support that. Libre lang mag-subscribe. Just support us, just comments. We appreciate it. Let me also project itong first Substack natin. So yan, essentially, ito po, habang di pa tayo kasal, hindi pa tayo naging tatay na tatay, zadi pa tayo, gawin ko lahat yan. Kasi yan, pag nagkasal na tayo, may mga anak na tayo, marami kailangang alagaan, wala na tayong time sa mga ganyan, no? So while, speaking of which, kailangan ko pa, submit pa yung mga grades ng mga estudyante natin sa UP soon. Ayan, so sa baba, pinost natin yung Substack natin, just find it online, Substack, Richard Haydarian, first article, Russian mutiny from cook to coup plotter. I'll try to also give you a free version ng ating mga articles on international publication. Of course, because of copyright reasons, I cannot copy-paste yung mga sinulat ko, for instance, Nikkei Asia or New York Times, etc. But I'll try to give a glimpse of my other writings, also provide data analysis, and also kind of a more blogger-ish kind of up-to-date analysis of latest happening. So, dun sa Russia, pinost natin yung mga latest analysis natin. Now, balikan natin itong mga latest naman sa Pilipinas. So please again, subscribe, support, Real Talk. See, I'm so supportive of my other projects, collaborations. Yan. Okay, balikan natin yan. Obviously, when it comes to Attorney Gadon, kilalang-kilala niyo siya dahil siya ang heckler BOBO, di ba? Back in the day. Ngayon, ano na siya? Undersecretary ba? Ito po, di ba? Kilalang-kilala niya yan eh. Di ba? Ano ulit yung favorite niya? Words niya before? Ayan. Ay, huwag kang tumabi sa akin. Doon ka. Layo ka. Ayan. Favorite. Ayan. Favorite words niya. B-O-B-O. And guess what? Yun din po ang na-post. Yun po yung nagtitrending kahapon sa Twitter, yung B-O-B-O. Yan. Otherwise known as very intelligent, very high level, otherwise known as kakistocracy. Alright. Now, pag-usapan natin yan because, okay, let's come clean, let's be honest. I know that just, a few weeks ago, actually the other month, I openly talked about dun sa isang column natin sa Philippine Daily Inquirer about a supposed grand coalition. So I talked about the possibility of Marcos Jr. expanding his base. So even if you look at my latest articles sa Nikkei Asia, for instance, I look at how the demotion of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, the demotion, and and withdrawal of Sara Duterte from the ruling party, Lakas CMD, that creates space for other kinds of elements, forces, and factions to enter the supposed grand coalition of Marcos Jr. Now, speaking of grand coalition, we had former Defense Secretary Gibo Chudoro entering most recently sa cabinet niya. Mamaya na yung pag-usapan natin Department of Health. Finally, meron na tayong Department of Health Secretary na permanente. Actually, to be honest, our expectation was someone else who ran for Congress was the one in the race. Yung family name po ay Padilla, Dr. Padilla. But for some reason, hindi po siya yung nag-end up as Department of Health Secretary. I'm sure there are many reasons for that. But if you talk to the experts, you talk to the people in the medical community, you talk to people who know about what's going on behind the scenes, they would say na si Dr. Padilla was supposedly in the wrong. But eventually, we had someone na also quite known to us and for some quite controversial, right? Ending up. But at least the good news is meron na tayong full-fledged health secretary, hindi lang officer in charge. So we also in the defense ministry now, another very critical, super critical position that did not go to Sara Duterte last year. It's now with Gibo Chidor. Now, obviously, Gibo was in the Arroyo cabinet, but to say that Gibo is an Arroyo person, it really misses the point. Because if you bother to follow what happened during the 2010 elections, alam nyo na, Villarroyo, yung mga ganyan. You would know that, he's more or less his own man. He was invited by former president to be the defense secretary. Duterte was a big fan of his, called him brilliant, almost genius. Of course, we know with Gibo, this is a person who topped the bar examination. He also passed the New York bar, and he took also his master's LLM in Harvard University, Harvard Law School. So this is someone who's obviously smart, not just another run-of-the-mill Ivy League graduate, but really, really smart person for anyone who bothered to get to know about him, putting aside political biases, etc. No? So the Gibo appointment, actually, I would say overall was quite encouraging. I look forward to actually interviewing Secretary Gibo. Back in the day, we had a lot of opportunity to interview our former secretary, Defense Secretary Lorenzana. I think at least on 3 occasions I interviewed him in the past, 2 or 3 occasions. You can check my interviews with Defense Secretary Lorenzana. They're all on YouTube. You can find them for free. Now, I think the Gibo one is okay. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I'll give the health secretary appointment, well, let's just say A for effort. At least we have a full-fledged health secretary. So actually, the big thing we're watching out for right now, mga kameta, is the DFA secretary, because the big talk in the town right now is that there'll be a new DFA secretary soon. Again, no offense to the current DFA secretary. I think he's a fantastic person. I always said that if there's someone, a strategically oriented DFA secretary that we can have, I would say that is our current ambassador to the United States, Babe Romualdez. Just for transparency purposes, I've known him for quite some time. I've interviewed him on multiple occasions for my show on One News, The View from Manila. Also, I interviewed him dito sa podcast natin for Meta. You can check it out on yourself. You could see how comfortable we are. He was very honest, very, very open, very comprehensive dun sa interviews natin. So I really think if there's going to be a replacement, I think he's the best person to be there. But since he's the Secretary to the United States, I think there's an effort by some people to try to denigrate him and to say that he's not the right person, because supposedly Defense Secretary has to be a balanced person that can also deal with China. So I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what's going to happen at that time. For me, merit-based, he should be the DFA Secretary. But surprise, surprise, one of the other names that we heard popping up is actually Mar Rojas. So I know that in the, let's say, mainstream discussion, or whatever you can call it, in the mainstream Marites discussion, rather, Mar Rojas is considered as supposedly one of the candidates for Department of Agriculture. I don't think so. I think DTI was always closer to his expertise. And given the current state of affairs, I think the DTI secretary was a much more feasible option for him. But what makes things interesting is that dun sa diplomatic community, I heard from some quarters that Mar Rojas also is being considered as DFA secretary potentially. Now, before you make crazy comments or surprise comments, ano, kuya, okay na? Mabalinan? O sige, mata. Sige, subliya ka. Next time sige pat. Thank you, kuya, kapsat. Ayan, sorry, may pinaayos lang ako dito. Yan, mga Ilocano. Balikan natin ito. No. Now, the DFA secretary position being attached to Mar Rojas is not something new. I remember very well because I've been in this business for quite some time. Back in 2012, there were discussions that Mar Rojas could be the DFA secretary. This is especially after Mar Rojas had a meeting, high-level meeting with Xi Jinping. Back then, the heir apparent, the incoming head of the Communist Party, had a meeting with Mar Rojas, and Mar Rojas was the head of supposed Liberal Party and kind of like the second man after Pinoy. Of course, we remember the circumstances of 2010 elections. It was supposed to be Mar Rojas running, and then he stepped back, and then came. Anyway, so there was a meeting between Mar Rojas and Xi Jinping. It went very well. This is the time when President Hu Jintao, outgoing President Hu Jintao, did not want to meet Aquino dahil dun sa mga hidwaan na nangyari sa West Philippine Sea at saka etc. Yung renaming of the West Philippine Sea. So things are not going well. This is during the time when Russia was hosting the APEC summit, Vladivostok. Oh my God. Those were the days. So those were the days when everyone thought Russia will be part of the Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific community. But now, of course, things are very, very different nowadays. We don't even know how long Putin will last in power. Anyway, during that time, then the meeting actually went very well. You can go online, Google it yourself. Let me actually find it. So Maro Haas, Xi Jinping. It should come out. I know this because as a journalist, I covered these issues. Ayan, ito. Okay. Nahanap ko na. Ito. Maro Haas talks with China Xi Jinping, constructive, cordial. Now, why am I doing this? Because I'm explaining to you that the idea of Maro Haas as a DFA secretary is actually not a crazy thing. It's not a totally crazy thing. So let me post you a picture of him meeting Xi Jinping. Actually, the meeting went quite well. My understanding is that in China also, they were quite okay and happy with him. Let me just show this. So, yeah, so this is the meeting that Xi Jinping and Maro Haas had. That's a picture there. I also post the article about it. Kasi alam niyo naman, when we do our podcast and now we do our spaces, everything we do is based on evidence, based on data, based on research, based on analysis. Hindi katulad ng mga ibang charlatans dyan na pa-space. Tapos, ang usapan, Russian coup. And there's literally zero Russia expert. Zero Russia experts. I mean, I was just there joining some of these pretentiously self-aggrandizing spaces over the weekend. Natatawa lang ako at the level of pretentiousness of these people claiming to provide cutting-edge analysis of what was happening so ito so na-post ko. So this is Maro Haas talks with Chinese Xi Jinping, constructive, cordial. Now, just to be clear, I'm not promoting Maro Haas as the next Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Obviously, we know what happened next. The late, and God bless his soul, Albert de Rosario would stay as the Foreign Affairs Secretary, but there was really big talk in town that Maro Haas could be the next Foreign Affairs Secretary. So this is 2012 going into 2013. So I posted here. You can check it online. Palace, Maro Haas talks with China Xi Jinping, constructive, cordial. You can just Google it yourself and see that in fairness to Maro Haas, he handled himself very well in that meeting with Xi Jinping. So the idea of Maro Haas being considered for DFA Secretary is not actually a totally crazy thing. It's not a totally crazy thing because this was actually, bubbling into the surface and discussions a decade earlier. And for whatever you think about Maro Haas, whether you think he didn't do well as an opposition leader, whether you think he was never really fit to run for the presidency, let's not forget that he had better days. As a top senatorial candidate, as someone who oversaw the negotiation of JPEPA, which is, not necessarily the best agreements, as someone who played a very critical role as DTI secretary in pushing the Philippines in the direction of getting integrated in the global outsourcing industry, among others. And I think he has the gravitas, he has the connections, he has the self-confidence. You can even say in a Trumpian sense, he fits the bill. I mean, he got the look, right? So the idea of him as a potential DFA secretary, I don't think is too crazy. Now, this is still marites to me because the last time I had an interview, recently lang yun. This is 3 weeks ago or so. So I was with Edwin Lasherda dun sa CNN Philippines. Thank you pala sa mga CNN Philippines friends natin for still interviewing me. I mean, although, of course, I have my own show right now in One News with TV5 people. But I try to keep it as open as possible. Now, going back to this, actually, you can see it online. You can YouTube it yourself. Just check my interview with together with Edwin Lasherda. Kasama namin si the other great Hontiveros, right? And there, Edwin Lasherda, who knows his stuff, he said something like, he essentially implied that Maro would be open to join the cabinet. It's like that offer has not been made yet. But this is 3 weeks ago, so many things may have changed. Now, so yun po yung state of mind, right? Natin when I talked about the possibility of a grand coalition under Marcos Jr. In fact, if you look at some of my articles on Philippine Daily Inquirer, among others, I mentioned the archetype of Bismarckian politics, right? So one of my favorite biographies is biographies of Bismarck, the great Prussian leader, and he was really a ruthless guy. I mean, he was a person who I don't appreciate because he was ruthless, but because he was someone who could bring a coalition together from both right and left. So, for instance, he was the one who introduced essentially the welfare state, or at least the pension system, to Germany. That was quite of a progressive position. At the same time, he was very strong and aggressive on military foreign policy front. So if you look at Otto von Bismarck, he was someone who could play both the right and the left. And surprise, surprise, actually 100 years later, someone named Angela Merkel, quite liberal, very different from Bismarck, in a very different context. Actually, she also did that. So, if you talk our friends, social democratic friends, they would say that a lot of policies that Merkel had, ninakaw daw niya yan sa mga social democrats, sa mga SOCDEM. At the same time, she had an alliance with the liberals, so there were times that she would get also policies from the liberals. So from left, from right, from center. So, decisive rule from the center. That's what Bismarck did. And Bismarck was able to maintain a very strong coalition that made Prussia a superpower towards the late 19th century, until, of course, he was kicked out by Wilhelm II, and the rest is history. Now, I think that archetype can work in any country whereby you have a president who doesn't have too strong views overall. He's not very ideological, and his temperament is for coalition building. And surprise, surprise, in the case of the Philippines, you have a president who always talks about unity. Now, obviously, last year, pinagtatawanan yung unity na yan, na parang ano lang, mini-meme na yan. But if you look at it, actually, I think there are the political ingredients for a kind of a unity grand coalition cabinet, as there are some realignments that are happening. So on one hand, obviously, there are some fault lines on the China-US foreign policy front, which, as I explained in my Nikkei Asia piece recently, may kinalaman din ito doon sa mga demotion at promotions na nangyari sa Philippine House of Representatives. Now, my sense is Marcos would want to keep Sara, Arroyo, and all of those powerful women as part of his own grand coalition. But to keep things on an even keel and to balance it out, I think he'll be open also to bring elements from the other side, from the liberal side, who knows, even from the progressive side. So yun yung state of play, folks, 2-3 weeks ago when we were discussing the cabinet of Marcos Jr. And then, boom, meron kang itong situation kung saan na-appoint si Larry Gadon. Now, there are essentially two types of criticism raised against this appointment. The first one is, well, we're talking about someone who was suspended because of very violent and inappropriate comments vis-a-vis especially one of the leading journalists in the Philippines. Of course, you know who I'm talking about. She's actually, I think, one of our followers here, and I've been also following her for quite some time. And this was not a kind of an out-of-character situation. Actually, it came on the back of what some called the BOBO heckler style, right? So remember the whole... So that's one concern. It's like, I mean, if Marcos Jr. wants to build a good relationship with the media, present himself as kind of reform, etc., it's like, not sure this is like the best appointment, some would say, no? Now, obviously, when it comes to loyalty, I mean, this is personal. Now, actually, to be honest, I think I bump into Attorney Gadon, or ex-Attorney Gadon, I don't know how to put it, on 2 occasions. I think once, paras kami sa restaurant, and I was like, parang familiar to, at parang napansin ko, nakatingin din siya, parang familiar din to. And he was very quiet, he was very nice, I think he was with his family, etc. And then the second time I got to, at least there was a kind of an in-flesh meeting, but I didn't manage to really talk to him, was when I was giving a talk with our Chinese-Filipino community friends about BRI, and he was in the crowd, and he was very nice, he was very polite, etc. So I think for people who know him in person, they know that, he's a very different person from what he projects. But that doesn't mean, for critics, that doesn't mean let's just forget about all of the, all of the heckling, and more than heckling, the kind of very violent rhetoric that we saw. I mean, the kind of very aggressive rhetoric that we saw vis-a-vis one of the leading journalists in the Philippines. But the second question raised here is, what is the expertise? Because we're talking about someone who was appointed as presidential advisors for poverty alleviation, and I'm not sure that's necessarily his expertise, because as far as NAPSI, anti-poverty, the bureaucracies and agencies inside the governments are concerned, I mean, you used to have people like Joel Racamora in this position. And if you're familiar with people like Joel Racamora, I mean, we're talking about Ivy League graduate people, we're talking about brilliant intellectuals, we're talking about people who know development issues, you're talking about progressives, we're talking about grassroots activists, etc. Now, whatever retag you want to do, bahala kayo sa buhay nyo. But Just look at the portfolio of people like Joel Rocamora, Secretary Joel Rocamora, who was in charge of NAPSI back in the day. So that should be the kind of standard that many feel should be a basis for appointment of someone in charge of anti-poverty coalition. So was this rewarding and kind of a loyal soldier from back in the day? Because of course we know that Attorney Gadon was very aggressively questioning the legitimacy and mandate of former duly elected Vice President Leni Robredo, who of course came second in the last year's election, which was not necessarily a bad thing, because that's the thing. Earlier this year, we had President Marcos Jr. openly saying that may mga natalo sa election. Tumakbo ba si Gadon sa elections? Like, I didn't even notice it. May mga natalo sa election na who deserve to be in the cabinet because magaling sila and they got the merit and the CV. So, obviously, I was thinking about Gibo, among others. Not necessarily a fan, but, if you look at the CV of the guy, I mean, he knows his stuff, right? So, I was thinking more in that mold, if not in the mold of even bringing some progressives, or at the very least, bringing some liberals, for instance. Bringing some liberals like Mauro Haas, to into the cabinet, into the fold. And for me, remember, there's also the Leila de Lima aspect here that we have to keep in mind, because the expectation is within 6 to 8 months, the Leila de Lima issue will have a denouement, whereby she might get a bail or she might even get freed, or, it might go all the way, right? So I think there are many reasons to imagine or to prognosticate on the possibility of Marcos really building a grand coalition, unity coalition that has all sorts of elements there. And that puts him in a very strong position to push for decisive reforms down the road. Again, this is not an endorsement of him, etc. But my sense is like that this latest appointment, it kind of na-fluster na ako, because I'm not sure how we can fit it into that thing. Or maybe I was doing Ferrari all the time, but actually Geely lang pala. No offense, I'm just kidding. You get what I'm saying, right? No, I love Geely. Actually, it's one of the, I think, the breakout star cars out there. Sorry, I'm a car aficionado guy. No, but you get what I'm saying. Like, hindi naman na we feel like a fool, but it was just like saying everything is coming together for Marcos Jr. to actually build a powerful coalition that can sustain him for years to come and allow him to rule from the center in the best way possible. And yet, we see this latest appointment, which I don't know what's happening here. Anyway, I'll keep it there. So here on Space, I see there are people who are making requests. I don't know how is this gonna work. Am I gonna allow the request? Sorry, what's that supposed to be? Wait lang. So, are there people who want to talk or something like that in the space? Sorry, this is my first time doing space. I don't know how this is supposed to be. Is this a request for you guys to talk or something? Wait lang. Baka naman awayin nyo ako or something. What's disrespect? Hello? Is anyone there? Is that Brandy Martinez? What is that? Is that a request to talk? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay. I will figure this out at some point. Sorry, it's just my first time doing this. Okay, anyway. Maybe there are people who want to comments dito sa... Check natin sa meta ano yung mga comments dito. Braf Pitt. Kaantok ng ampun. Rizani. Yan. Sabi ni Rizani, baka may ninong... Yan, sa kalam. Sabi naman ng Tablata, salamat sa updates. Thank you very much. Ayan may mga comments dyan. Uncertain, but it tells something about the... Okay, si Eden Olonan is talking about how the appointment actually tells something about the direction. I don't know. Maybe... How should I put it? Maybe BBM is just trying to square the circle or kind of tick all the boxes, rewarding loyalists, at the same time bringing some quality people. Kasi on one hand, you have like Gibo level. Again, it's not an endorsement of him, but at least his CV speaks of it. And then you had the DOS secretary level, which is like, okay, a mixed picture. And then you had this appointment. So, they kind of cancel out each other. So let's say about the other appointment. But clearly, it's turning out as a kind of a mixed picture, depending on how you stand on things. But optics-wise, I'm just not sure this is this is the best move by BBM yet. But, loyalty is perhaps important to him and he's awarding loyalty. And as far as Attorney Gadon or ex-Attorney Gadon is concerned, I mean, he proved his loyalty to BBM through and through throughout those years. And actually, yun nga, for people who met him or at least kind of bump into him, he's actually not anything like what he projects, but, wala, public figure ngayon. So, it also matters what you project in the public. Alright, on that note, thank you very much everyone. Are there any questions or anything before we close this discussion? Oh, by the way, dito, legacy talaga yan ng Sibuyas, sabi ni Somewhere. Ayan naman tayo. O, magpakabait na tayo. Good PM kay Michelle, Andrea, Madrigal. Thank you very much kay Joe Chalan. Ayan, ang question niya, paano naman maging anti-poverty expert yan? Thank you rin kay Gerson Menzo for joining us. Appreciate that. Very kind of you. Ayan. Sino yan? Kakamping Jet. Naka-pay-pay. Alright. Thank you very much again, guys. What's going on there in space? Let me figure out. Kasi I allowed some of the folks to talk, but I'm not hearing anything. Anyway, babalikan ko kayo later on. Hopefully, we can figure out what's going on here. And hopefully we can have more of this in the near future. Alright? Thank you very much, guys. And talk to you soon.